I'm Brooke McDonald, and I'm the president and CEO for the Conservation Foundation. The Woodridge Park District reached out to the Conservation Foundation several months ago asking for our advice and to come out and take a look at the property. So we sent several of our expert staff members out to take a look at the property and provide recommendations. When we're talking about land conservation, we're talking about preserving and restoring land to ecological health, while at the same time making sure that we're engaging people and inviting people in. We are more interested in preserving land for people rather than preserving land from people. People are part of the landscape. Human beings are part of nature, and we need to keep in mind that as we're restoring and managing land, particularly public parks like the Woodridge Park District, that we're doing it not just for nature, but also for people. The restoration will help with the health of the entire ecosystem. You know, deer are just one piece of the puzzle. And so we want more than just deer. We want other beneficial species of wildlife like birds and butterflies and pollinators, and then deer will have their place then in the ecosystem. Urban deer are different than the deer that live out in the country. Urban deer, over time, they've evolved to learn how to survive with streets and cars and people and homes and living in parks and living in other areas. They are very adaptable and they're very resilient. So the deer will do what deer always do. They move around. Deer never stay in the same area. They are constantly moving around. And because the deer around here are so used to being around people and humans, the work that the Park District is doing will have very little impact on the deer. They'll go somewhere else and then they'll come back. And they remember where the food is. And when the Park District is done with their restoration project, there'll be plenty of good habitat for deer and plenty of food for deer and other animals that currently aren't located in the woodlands and in the park will be a lot more common. It all starts with the soil. So by removing invasive species of plants, it allows more sunlight to hit the forest floor. And then as more native plants start to grow, it stabilizes that soil. So we get infiltration of rainwater, we get reduced erosion, and so then we're preserving our soil. And as we preserve our soil, then the native plants have something to grow in. So we sort of start from the bottom, sort of at the base of the food chain, and we focus on the plants. Once we reestablish native plants, insects, pollinators, birds, other animals then begin to come in. It's sort of a build it and they will come kind of a mindset. But as we go through our restoration process, which takes time, we focus on the plants first, and then the animals will come. And there will be plenty of room for deer and hawks and owls and birds and butterflies and other forms of beneficial wildlife to thrive. You know, it's just like any other form of diversity. The more diverse we are as a community, the healthier our community is. The more diverse our investment portfolio is, the healthier our investment portfolio is. And the same thing in nature. The more different species of plants and animals we have living together, relying on each other for survival, and having the proper amount of competition, that is a healthy ecosystem. So the more different species of native plants and animals we have living together and depending on each other and interrelating to each other, the healthier our ecosystems are. Well, invasive species are mostly non-native plants, particularly shrubs like European buckthorn and Asian bush honeysuckle. They're not native to North America. They're native over in Europe and in Asia. And their natural controls that they evolved with are still over there. But when plants like that are introduced here, the natural controls aren't here. So they just sort of go crazy. And our native plants and trees and shrubs, they have natural controls that they have to deal with here and have to compete with. So when we introduce new species that are not native to this area, they tend to take over and push out our native plants. And when that happens, we get fewer native plants, fewer species of wildlife, and so then our ecosystems begin to degrade because biodiversity decreases. We measure ecological health by increased biodiversity. So through proper restoration and management, we can improve our native biodiversity, therefore improving the ecological health of our native landscapes. It's hard to get rid of all invasive species. As we know, dandelions like to grow in our yards, and that's okay. I think it's impossible to say we're going to get rid of all the invasive species. A good, healthy ecosystem is going to have 10% less invasive species growing in it. The properties we manage at the Conservation Foundation, we still have some invasive species. It's an ongoing effort. There are invasive species in the forest preserve. So even in some of the best restored ecosystems, you're still going to have this ongoing issue of invasive species. What we want to avoid is those invasive species dominating that natural landscaping. And so we do that through restoration and ecological management. It's about connecting people to the land and helping to develop an appreciation for our natural landscapes. You know, they're just starting and they still have a lot of work to do. It'll take a while for that area to look nice. But it's a stark difference, and I understand where people can look at that and they might go, oh my, it looks bad, or they're destroying this property. And that's what restoration projects look like. You know, when a property goes so long without being managed or invaded by invasive species, then that initial transition from a bad habitat to good habitat can be startling to some people. But it takes time. You know, nature is not on a time schedule. You know, people are, but nature's not on a time schedule. Nature doesn't care how long it takes. It's going to do what it's going to do. But with proper management that the Park District is going to employ, that process will be expedited. And within a few years, that area will look absolutely beautiful and be healthy. And when we talk about healthy, we mean ecological health. We focus on native biodiversity. So we want to invite native biodiversity back into that woodland. And we do that through proper ecological restoration and management.